It has no, I have notes. I have them.
Yeah, that'd be
perfect. I know, like this, I care they would say to each other. I share it really.
It's not, you can reach out the like controversy out. City council on it.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I'm focused. I.
But you don't.
You don't want to be this.
No, just.
Oh, that's perfect, yeah, okay.
Yes, perfect.
I'll just leave it right there.
Great, great, great.
I'm ready.
All right.
We're ready whenever you are. We are live.
Business stuff on this, folks.
Call to order the August 21st, 2025 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. Can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Strauss,
Here.
Commissioner Oakley, here, Commissioner Strong.
Here.
Commissioner Weathers.
Here.
And Commissioner Inman is absent excused and Kaiser is absent excused. We have four.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll now call for any public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone signed up to comment about anything not on the agenda?
Not on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
I thought we did the other one first.
Here?
Yep. And if you could state your name and
no,
address for
no,
the record, that'd be great.
My name is Brian Charles McKinley. I'm here in relation to the Dome Building Community Coalition. The Dome Building, as you know, is on the North Campus, well, the old North Campus, the State Hospital. And I'm coming to you as a former member, former vice chair, I suppose I was, for a god awful amount of years. Was I? Oh, geez, I don't know. Anyway, it mixes with Planning Commission. Anyway, so I'm coming to you because what we're doing is we're in communication with DAS to acquire and revitalize the Dome Building and turn it into a community center / you add the community event of your choice in there. What I'm going to be doing specifically is historic preservation of the building. So the Dome Building Coalition is finding people from the community, nonprofits and such to give ultra low fees for like office space, gathering space, storage space, which is a big challenge for a lot of nonprofits because of the money it costs. But what I'm going to be doing is focusing on the preservation side of things. And that's why I wanted to come to you, because I know the important role that the HLC plays in Salem's historic preservation, and Kimberly especially. So I don't really have anything I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just giving you information. I want this to be as public and as transparent of a process as possible. We didn't want to open up one day and go, hey, we're here. And everyone goes, who are these guys? What is this? So if you have any questions I can answer, or you can contact us at our emails back there, domebuildingcc@gmail.com. We also have a website, domebuilding.org. And if you know former Mayor Hoy, Chris Hoy, he is our government liaison. So if you have any questions, you can talk to him directly also. Other than that, if there's no questions, I just wanted to present that to you, let you know that we exist. Of course.
There's going to be any need for exterior changes to the building as part of your vision?
No, the point is not to make exterior change. Well, okay, so there is one exterior change I would like to make someday, and that is the removal of the air conditioning unit so it can restore it to its more historic state. That would require a lot of money, and that is one of the big barriers that people wanting to buy the place in the past. There's been two big processes of selling, and no one ever wanted to buy it. One of them was because it has no central air. So one of my goals, 10, 15 years down the road is to get those out of the windows and restore the outside to its historic appearance. I'm doing a lot of research with the Willamette Heritage and archives and stuff to try to find the original plans of the building, because also, fun fact, the inside has also been completely changed from the 1910-12 era. And we don't need, I can't even find anything what it looked like back then. I'm sure there was pictures of some sort, and I want to eventually, 20 years down the road, gut it out and restore it to its original form. So if this is successful, hopefully in sometime next year, you guys can have a meeting over there. I think we always talked about, didn't we always talk about that?
Great idea.
Yeah, so. All right, huh?
We'd love a tour.
Yeah, and of course, yes, of course, a tour, absolutely, of course. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Alrighty, next up is the consent calendar. I will take a motion for the approval of minutes. Do I hear a second?
I will second.
All right, we've got a move to approve from Commissioner Weathers and a second from Commissioner Strong. Are there any corrections that anyone would like to make note of? All right, and I think we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes pass. Next up is going to be our public hearing. So I will now open the public hearing for historic review case number as 25-15 for 220 Washington Street Southeast. Would the reporter please read the hearing procedure statements into the record?
This is a public hearing to consider case number HIS 25-15 for property located at 220 Washington Street South. The criteria applicable to this hearing are listed in Salem Revised Code, Chapter 230.025, Standards for Historic Contributing Buildings in Residential Historic Districts. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Historic Landmarks Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the State Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. The similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Historic Landmarks Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Are there any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest that commissioners would like to out? I will note that I'm within the 250 feet of notice boundary for this property, so I did receive some additional information about it, but that will not affect my ability to elaborate fairly today. We'll now take the staff presentation.
Oh, yeah, Michelle. Oh, I got that part. Great. I messed up and I have to do some things. So just a moment, just a moment. Okay, didn't log us into the meeting on here. I knew I could. Oh, doesn't matter. Sorry. Just got back from vacation. I don't remember how to do work. Want that one. Oh, I don't need to sign it again. Why am I signing it again? Sorry, I forgot. Can't be logged in two places at the same time. Sorry, I don't remember. Basement. Don't want to sign in. It is. Sorry. about that. Continue.
That presentation.
Good morning. I'm Jacob Morris, Historic Planner for the City of Salem. I'd like to enter the staff report, attachments, and all public testimony into the public record. This property is located at 220 Washington Street South. It's a City of Salem individually designated landmark. It's not in a historic district. This property is known as the Downing House. Is built around 1916 for Miss Minnie Downing. She was secretary to Attorney General George M. Brown, and also to I.H. Van Winkle, Oregon politician who was recognized as a leader of the Republican Party in Oregon. The house was also home to Miss Downing's stepfather, Colonel John H., and mother, Florence Cradlebaugh. Colonel Cradlebaugh was a city editor of the Capital Journal, and Miss Downing and her mother lived in the house into the mid-1930s. Then Lowell and Jean Kern purchased the house in 1937 and asked Salem architect Clarence Smith to add to the house. At that time, a new small entry porch was added to the north of Washington Street, to the north or the Washington Street side of the house. The first known depiction of the property is a 1927 Sanborn fire insurance map. If you look up at the left top there, you can see. At that point, it's roughly just a rectangular building with a porch on the east side, and then a small, tiny little one-story bump out on the west. The survey record notes that Salem architect Clarence Smith added an entry porch to the center of the north elevation in 1937. And then the survey inventory form also mentions a south wing added by Smith. But regardless, by the update, the Sanborn map that we call the 1950 updated map is one that was originally drawn, and then they gradually updated it to 1950. And if you look to the left side there, you can see there's now a sizable irregular kind of one-story wing there on the west. And it's marked A, which that's short for auto house or personal garage. So by the middle of the century, we've got quite a bit of alteration going on. And then in 1987, as part of the historic survey of the area, site plan was sketched. It's not to scale, but you can see that it looks like the west garage has been modified if you look to the left there. And then historic images were provided by the applicant. They're undated, but they generally kind of show those massing changes, so we can kind of date based on corresponding there. And this is the first one to your right. If you look at that, that's the kind of west side of the house where the garage additions are on that tall two-story addition. We don't know exactly what date they were, but they were in a binder. And so this one and one right next to it, we're on the same photographic paper, so we believe they're contemporary. And then the next one you can kind of see. The next one on the top would be likely the same age. And if you look on the south side of the 1987 survey image, you kind of see what they are called a greenhouse on the south. At the very top and then at the bottom as well is it looks like it's a little later based on the paper, and then also it's a color image, so sometimes that can indicate that it's later. But we see a bump out. It's hard to know if they would call that a greenhouse at that point. That would be a little unusual. But we do know that that's before 1987 that we had all of those alterations, because that's what they were drawing in that sketch. And then we have another undated photo on the south, and it's getting larger and larger. You can see there, we've got something that looks like that could be something that you might call a greenhouse there. And then also you see it's bumped out from the main house. It is secondary to the primary house itself. If you can look at the very top on that image, you can still see the roof line is above, and then the second story windows are still there. And so we've developed quite a substantial south addition, and there's also, a substantial brick foundation there at that time. And we know this was prior to 1995 because we have some in 1996 there are plans for kind of a comprehensive alteration to the south and then the west part of the house. I wouldn't call it a rehabilitation, but it's got some elements of that, and at that point, you can kind of see there we're having the full like open greenhouse that's all the way there, the full sunroom there, and that's what this image shows here. And then to kind of go back to the west side of the house, you can kind of see to the left there was those alterations that somewhere around mid-century, a little bit after mid-century, that's the image I showed before. And you can kind of see there's that large two-story but smaller in footprint addition. And then in the foreground is, you can see the edge of the garage that was there at that time. And one thing to notice on both of those, you don't see a lot of that characteristic overhang that you see on the main part of the house in terms of the eaves and the gables and things. And then to the right, what you see is a little later, and that's after the 1996. You can see that kind of addition in the background is been altered, so it's larger. It extends farther to the north. It carries the same roof line angle as the property, the main part of the house. And then if you look at the garage in the foreground, it's been altered as well. It now it's been re-roofed, and so you can see that at that point they added overhangs and kind of bracketry. And then another thing they altered, you can't see quite as much here, but it'll be relevant a little bit later. If you look to the left side of the garage in the foreground, or the north side, you can see there is a little window there, and then there's still a window there, but it's hard to see from this angle. But also in that gable eave, there is now a window there, but that wasn't there originally on the garage, or in the inside of the gable there. And then just to kind of make a little more sense, this is kind of shows the massing, kind of between the old and the new, where the different alterations were, where that addition roof line changed, and then where the garage has a more complementary overhang for the gables. And these are parts of the plans from 1996, and you can kind of see there, you can see they've clouded out where that window was on the foreground. You can see kind of the fenestration patterns or the window patterns in the addition. And then you can kind of see from the north, one thing they've added is they've added a door into the garage, so you can get into the garage. And the window from the site visit, it looks like it's an older window, so that window was used but likely moved over a little bit. And then, so that's kind of the alterations getting us up to this point. All right, and so we for the background, in May 20th, the applicant submitted materials. Initially, it was a Class 2 historic design review for a proposal to remove an attached sunroom greenhouse, construct an addition, modify an existing attached garage to this house. The application was deemed complete for processing on June 20th. Notice was sent according to SRC on requirements on June 20th. from this notice period, 5 letters of support were received, and then the Scan Neighborhood Association also provided a letter, and they have some concerns regarding the categorization of the project as a class 2, mainly because of the extent of the alterations, but also if you look on the north side, there were some alterations that you could see from that main facade there. And so we did concur with that part. The property owner, based on that information, determined to withdraw the initial application and make a new application as a class 3. So that's why we're having a hearing here today in order to address those. Another thing they wanted was more detail. And so that chronology of construction we did was as I did just then. We provided that, and then that's also an attachment in your staff report to kind of break down what's new and what's old, because some parts of it were pretty sensitive, and it's a little hard to tell what's older and what's newer unless you've got some of that detail. And then let's see. And so to get into the proposal, on the left you can see the proposal is to remove the south greenhouse that's there now, and then also additional modifications to the west garage and the addition area. And what those look like, if you can see on this image on the south greenhouse, they want to remove the non-historic greenhouse sunroom. And you can see kind of, and that was the 1996 part. Well, that was some of the 1996 part. And you can kind of see, if you look at the roof of that, some of the glass panels have fallen out and that sort of thing. So it's either in need of a lot of repair, and it wasn't really that appropriate of an addition at the time. And so they're wanting to do that. And they also want to construct an addition in this area to expand their part of the alterations past 1996. There was some done to the what you're looking at would be the kitchen area, and it actually bumps out a little more than it did, and that was done in 2012. But all of that is covered by the glass there. And you can see this is an elevation of the proposed alterations. It generally follows the footprint of the assembly there is now. There's a little bit of alteration, and you can see it's going from a sunroom to a more traditional addition. Overall, for all of this, the siding is to match the historic profile of this siding. The roof material is to match the historic roof trim, etc. And then on the west side, we have a proposal to modify the existing, and that's what we have right there now. The northern part and part of the west portion of the garage wall, which would be on the left, is to be retained. There is a proposal in order to make it work to move the door over and then move the window over on that garage area, because part of it will be utilized as a laundry room from the interior, but it will use the same fenestration, but it will alter that orientation. And then the garage itself will be extended and bumped out slightly to accommodate a 2-car garage. And the parking pad will be, accommodated altered to accommodate that. And you can kind of see here at this elevation, what that would look like. So you see a little bit of change there. The most noticeable change is the 2-car garage right there, and there is some work to be done on the addition that was previously changed back at some time in between 50s, and when that was done to make it more visually compatible with the other roof line angles. And then I pulled a little bit more detail. One thing that is a change is if you look at this detail of the door to the window, where they propose those to go. And then on the far end, that window would be a new one to match what they have there in terms of proportions. And then to the far right, that's the extension that you'd see from the north side. And then on the proposal, as I mentioned previously, there was some work done in 2012, and this is the windows that were used. They have compatible mullions that aren't between light; they're actually in the light, and they're a window. So that is the model they're using for their fenestration in all areas where they're proposing new windows.
Real on those.
What did you have for the material on?
Could be metal clad, so metal exterior with interior painted. Maybe all the thermal coats.
And then this gives a little detail of the actual footprint changes. And I tried to do a little bit of pointing out a few things. If you look at the red line that's running kind of through the middle, that would be the south end of the original house, so that's the original. And then to the
1913.
or roughly 1916, we think. And then to the right, you can kind of see that would be where the garage addition is currently roughly. And then the far right to the left is that would be new. The part, if you look where the line, that red line, if you extend it, that would be the kind of north side of that bump out. And in this case, the north is on the bottom. And so that would be the 2-car garage up there to the right. And if you see the dotted lines, I have a red line to the left, a red arrow to the left that shows kind of those dotted lines. That would be the footprint of that brick foundation and sunroom as it sits now. And so all of that work on the top, that's on the south side on that secondary elevation there. And then the standards, let's see. For this 230025, historic contributing buildings in residential historic districts, G, alterations and additions. And then they're pretty extensive, so I broke them down into groups based on kind of what they're addressing. And so the first several are materials. And so criterion A is building material shall be of traditional dimensions. B, material shall be of the same type, quality, finish as original material of the building. New masonry added to the building shall, to the greatest extent feasible, match the color, texture, bonding of the original masonry. And based on based on the submittal materials, we find that it is following those. They're doing things like paying attention to the siding profile and material, and they're looking at a lot of the material is wooden, and they're using wood, that sort of thing. Roofing material similar, and so we find that profile these criteria are met. And then there's one more addressing materials, and that says D, for those areas where original material must be disturbed, original material shall be retained to the maximum extent possible. And although this project is relatively extensive, the alterations are localized to areas where alterations have already happened. There is some chance in some areas that something that may have gained significance over time, but only to marginal, possibly, impacted. And so we find that this one is met as well, because we're looking at alterations that happen on the west side and the south side of the building in areas where there already were sometimes generations of alterations. And then 230025, we have the rest have to do with design. And so the first two, A and B, addition shall be located at the rear or in an inconspicuous side of the building. And be designed and constructed to minimize changes to the building. And we can kind of see that the let me find it. Removal of the greenhouse and construction of the rear addition, they occur in areas where additional material has already been removed or altered. Similarly, the proposed garage modification is in an area in which original material was already disturbed. And the main part of the house is not proposed for modification. Therefore, we recommend that the HLC find that these are met for the proposal. And then C specifies that they be limited in size and scale such that a harmonious relationship is created in relationship to the original building. And if we look at the elevation, from an elevation perspective, we don't have any two-story tall additions or anything like that. So it's secondary in height. In scale, it's a relatively sizable house, and so you don't see additions that are dominating it in terms of just massing. Also, there is a use of setbacks, so you can see the new additions are setbacks. They're differentiated in that way, so they visually don't make as much impact. And so for all those reasons, we recommend approval of those. And then D, be designed and constructed in a manner that significant historical, architectural, cultural features of the building are not obscured, damaged, or destroyed. And we can see from the design that the garage modification, it's set back. And as we've mentioned a few times now before, they're in altered areas. But the visual features, they're not being obscured because there are setbacks being utilized. They're not being damaged or destroyed because of the areas in which they occur, so that we recommend approval of this. E, be designed to be compatible with the size, scale, material, and character of the building and the district generally. This one is the building itself. It doesn't have a surrounding district. But we do find that the additions are smaller. They have a lower roof line. They use architectural cues from the main building, and they use compatible materials. And for those reasons, we recommend approval. And then F, not destroy or adversely impact existing distinctive materials, features, finishes, and construction techniques are examples of craftsmanship that are part of the building. And similar to the other recommendations, and for similar reasons, we don't see issues with that. And so we recommend approval of that as well. And then F and G, not destroy or adversely impact existing distinctive materials, features, finishes, or construction techniques or craftsmanship that are part of the building. And then also be constructed with the least possible loss of historic materials. And similar to mentioned before, there are substantial alterations to the property, but they're occurring in the most altered spots. And so that carries, so we recommend that as well. And then H, not create a false sense of historical development by including features that would appear to have been part of the building during the period of significance, but whose existence is not supported by historical evidence, shall not be added to the building. And I, be designed in a manner that makes it clear what is original to the building and what is new. And that one, because it does take cues from the original building, and then and also the first generation of alterations, some of those, or actually the 1996 large changes to the addition make it a little hard to tell when it came in, because it has a lot of cues. But we do recommend that because when we have issues, one thing, the setback is a way to differentiate exactly where one massing block is different from the other. And so that's one way to get those visual cues. But also the fenestration is not, a wood reproduction fenestration. It's what we feel is a historically appropriate, but if you went up to it, you could tell that it wasn't a wooden, window and think that it was old. And for those reasons, we feel those are good, sufficient. We do because the current application is just showing an example and is, if some of y'all in construction know, sometimes it's hard to get things that are exactly what there was previously and these days just sometimes getting anything in that as to what's appropriate. We do recommend a condition, and that is that all the fenestration, they present it to staff for the windows, the doors, and also the garage doors, because those are areas at which it would be easy to either make it look too realistic, say they, say, oh, we decided we want to do all wood, and then we wouldn't know the difference between the old and the new. But also if the proposed what was available may or may not be appropriate. It's likely to be something appropriate, but in order for it to ensure we hit that sweet spot, we recommend a condition that states that they before prior to. Let me actually get what I should have it say. Applicants shall present detailed specification on new windows and garage doors to Salem staff for review prior to starting work to ensure the design is differentiated yet historically compatible. And so that's our rationale for that condition. And then we had testimony from when this project was a class 2, it was a different case. There were 5 letters in support, and those are in your staff report. And there is also the letter from Scan that had the concerns in it, and so that's there. And from this point, we didn't have ones from after that time for the new posting. And for both rounds, we did receive from the building and safety that specifying that building permits will be needed for this project. They need to get those. We didn't receive any public agency comments. And then our recommendation is we recommend that the Historic Landmarks Commission approve the proposal with the following condition. Applicant shall present detailed specification of new windows and garage doors to the City of Salem staff for review prior to starting work to ensure the design is both differentiated yet historically compatible. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And this time I did also make images following. So if there is an image, we have it, that we can look at it closer.
Other questions from the commissioners? I've got just a couple of questions. I think just to clarify the kind of big changes that we're looking at here, we're looking at the removal of the sunroom, which would then become an expanded porch area and then extended, like a larger garage. Essentially, those are the 2 kind of big changes that we're looking at.
That's correct. In terms of the plan, the north and west portion of the existing garage, I think it would become their laundry room, and then they'd have the 2-car garage proper.
And I have one question. I don't know if we know the answer to this question, but I do see on these historic photos from, I think it was maybe the 60s, that there's this kind of nice window in the back. I assume that window is no longer on that south elevation. It's this one from the construction chronology, page 6.
With the family in the back.
Yeah, with the family in the back. I assume that window's no longer there.
Right, that there.
Yeah, that's not there anymore.
Okay,
If you go to the previous photos, you look at the sunroom.
okay, great. Maybe we'll get some clarification upon that for when you come up. That'd be great. Okay, cool. Great. I think I have all my questions for staff. Any other things?
On the new driveway, it's sort of shifting for the new garage. Right now, it's just landscaping. Like, what's the landscaping there? Like a dead tree. That's what I saw. Some brick paper or something.
Let me see.
That's pretty open. I think there's like one photo, but it was hard to tell.
Yeah, let me see what I have in here. Sorry, we've got a lot of images. But I wanted to give y'all some detail because we did have quite a bit of.
I think it works there.
Yeah, you can kind of see there's that large tree stump and then there's not any substantial anything. There is on this property a little historic shed that's managed to survive. I may have a picture of it, but it's not impacted by this, but might as well nerd out. Nope, I don't have it with me. I'm sorry. But anyway, there's a small historic shed that's not impacted, but it's retaining. They're retaining on there. You can kind of see it there.
It's.
Of use.
I think it's number seven, page 17 of the packet.
Oh, aging.
Right?
Okay, cool.
Okay, any more questions from commissioners? You wanna follow up on that? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's definitely there here.
That's, yeah, big stuff.
Okay, then I think we can conclude the staff presentation. Is there anyone or now time for the applicant's testimony? You have 15 minutes. And if you want to state your name and your address for the record, that would be great.
Sure. So I'm Steve Yao. I'm a property owner at 220 Washington Street South in Salem, and Molly is here as well. We're married. We're the current homeowners. And this is Paul. And what he printed.
So I'm Paul Willits, Design 4, as there before. Jake went over almost everything perfectly. The goal with the addition was to make it fit in with the scale. What like the original architect, if you've been asked, hey, we want a house bigger from day one. So you keep that grand full 2-story partner, they put a slope off smaller to the side. Same roof pitch, same detail, and a term I like to use is a house expansion versus addition. That the general public went to tell, oh my God, that got added on. It was sort of there from day one. Neighbors will know, but just general people, it will just fit in and flow with the property and the house. So it just looks like day one. It was the goal.
Any questions for the applicant? Just for the record, could you clarify the question on the window material?
Yeah, so if you go back,
I don't think you can just say it.
so basically where that photo of that window pop out was.
Yeah.
There was another photo then afterward looking through the greenhouse. That window got changed to French doors, it's the den,
Okay,
and that sunroom goes completely over it.
okay, great, so
And
that's
so-
the window is gone.
Yeah, and so where that sunroom comes off, that section becomes a covered porch. The roof goes and ties back into above where that little bump out was.
Okay, great.
And to the side is the kitchen and then the garage to the back.
And then any new windows that you will be installing, you mentioned, they'll be made of metal with wood interiors.
Yeah.
Is that?
Just like what the house had, those front of the house has, solid wood.
Yeah,
But everything that's been done since then is metal clad to meet the efficiency and then maintenance.
and do you have any concerns about the proposed condition of approval for submitting the window and garage doors? Okay.
Yeah, we'll just work with the client to get some selections so they can. The windows will be matching, but again, the doors, we need to make some selections to the exact garage doors, the exact. Other doors that we have on the property.
Are there additional questions? I think that's it, thank
Great,
you.
thanks. I would just state, that we love this home. We have no intention of doing anything that doesn't blend in with the surrounding environment and like. We just want to make it better and just a little more functional in a couple spots, like our cars don't fit in the garage, these kinds of things. So we're not looking to do anything at all that's outside of. the neighborhood and the home. We love that place, so we want it, right?
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah,
And then look at that one thing too with the garage. The garage then with redoing the driveway and shifting it back, it sort of pushed back a little ways. But then we can get 8-foot doors to get the vehicles in the garage, so you just see the house when you drive by versus house and cars always parked in front, which is kind of nice to see in a neighborhood like that. The focus is the house and not house and vehicles.
Me would have that card parked out front.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'll now call for anyone from the neighborhood association. Is there anyone here from the neighborhood association? I'm not seeing anybody. For the record, there's nobody else here. And I don't see anybody here that's on the sign up sheet.
No.
Okay, great. Nobody else. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Great, no. Okay, we don't need to do a rebuttal unless there's anything else the applicant would like to say. There wasn't really any much testimony, so that's kind of easy. Are there any additional questions for staff? Do remember that we won't be able to ask any new questions after we close the public hearing. Okay, great. I will now close the public hearing. Any additional or no additional testimony will be accepted at this time without formally reopening the hearing. I will now call for a motion.
Move to approve.
As staff recommends,
Yes, staff.
with the condition. With the condition. Okay, great. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, perfect. We've got a motion to approve with the condition from Commissioner Strong and a motion to second, or not a motion, second, just a second from Commissioner Colby. To your motion.
I think it looks like a much better use of space. It looks like it cleans up original, or not original, it cleans up. Remodeling that wasn't really compatible and that's looked dated out of place, and it makes it, like Alexander said, it's gonna make it flow much better from the street view. And the public right of way. The focus will be on the house instead of a house with garage, that's. Yeah, it just looks completely straightforward and obvious. Anything jumps out as an issue.
I'll add that I don't have any concern. I'm in favor of removing the attached microclimate. Side of the house, that's great, so good job, that's probably less maintenance and sure. But yeah, support. I also support the condition, so.
The any comments, Commissioner Withers?
It's good.
Yeah, I'll just note that I think Jake did a good job of going over the criteria. I do think that this proposal meets all of the criteria that are applicable to this case. I do think just kind of a note on the, I think this house it's really beautiful. It's one of my favorite ones in the neighborhood, and I think these windows on the front here are it's a really spectacular detail about this house, and so I'm happy to see that a lot of these contributing features are being left alone on that side of house, the sort of grand porch, the beautiful windows, that kind of even spaced design on the front. So I think those are some of the things that I would be really concerned about changes. But these changes to the rear and side facade, I think are pretty visually minimal for the public who might be looking at the house from the right of way. And so I support the motion and I support the condition. I think we're ready to take a vote. Okay, all in favor of the proposal to approve with the recommendation of staff for the condition, which I'll read from the record here. That the applicant shall present detailed specifications of new windows and garage doors to City of Salem staff for review prior to starting work to ensure the design is differentiated yet historically compatible. Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. All right, great. Perfect. Alrighty, and you guys can say if you want. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you. We don't have any special orders of business on the agenda, but we do have a couple of information reports and discussion items. We have a historical research report that we'll be getting a presentation on.
History of the house. That doesn't grab you.
Do we use the mic?
No.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Kimberly, Historic Preservation Program Manager. So I'm going to give you the same presentation that we gave to our equity roundtable. And I can't remember if I've talked to you at all about this project or not, but this has been a joint project between historic preservation staff, the long range planning team in community development, and also long range planning and transportation. We've also coordinated with the Human Rights Commission, and this is the first time that we've done anything like this at the city. And so we hired a consultant, HRA, to assist us with looking at the entire historic record since Salem became a city, to examine policies that were made by our leaders with a specific lens of trying to understand how they impacted underrepresented communities. So in order to do that, we found that we needed to actually start with a bigger picture. So understanding the federal level of decision making, and then go down and have a better understanding of the state level in order to understand what was happening locally. So I'm going to walk through what we found, and you were given the digital version of the report. I think Kosin has a hard copy there. If you want a hard copy yourself, please let us know. You can see I'm volunteering on Saturday when I do.
I mailed it.
Oh, did you mail it to everyone?
I got
Oh,
it
what?
now.
Oh, nice. Good job, Zach. Woo woo. I know you can totally read that timeline. But again, as I mentioned, we really wanted to understand the overall historic context of federal and state policies and how that impacted Salem. And we really, it's a lot to wrap our arms around. So, but we were focusing primarily on settlement, land use, housing, and transportation. And we did end up having to focus, like identify specific populations, because there's a lot of underrepresented communities to look at, and we didn't have a whole lot of time. So I'll give you some details about the ones we selected. In the document, you can see we've got a timeline, and as you can see, we went all the way back to when the Methodists first arrived. So here in Salem, that's the key point, is 1841. I'm not going to go through all of the things on the timeline, but the report itself does touch on some key points. And I'm just going to generally say that Salem's policies generally reflected what was happening at the larger national federal level. So for example, the reason the Methodists were here even before Oregon became a territory was because of federal policies relating to expansion, colonization, and that sort of thing. And the treatment of the marginalized communities at the time, which of course was the indigenous population, was informed not by anybody locally, but by the federal decisions that were made. And a lot of the adverse effects that occurred during that time period were the result of actions at the federal level. So just pointing that out, we found like it wasn't as simple as let's just see what Salem did. So anyway, that's our look at, and we went all the way through. Of course, we stopped at 2020. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised that Salem was a leader in certain respects at certain time periods. I'll give you a couple of examples here. So for example, the Chinese community, which I've done a lot of work on. In Salem, it was the Chinese community who resisted in a pretty powerful way during the Chinese exclusionary period. in the 1880s, the federal government had actually sent an agent here to collect registration cards. So they were required to get their own photograph taken, and they were required to register with this agent. And George Lai's son, who was the quote unquote mayor of Chinatown, he directed that Chinese community not to do that. And so it was an example of local resistance happening here in Salem. And they had a lot of support from the local community as well. So that was one good example. And then our Human Rights Commission in the 60s was one of the first that was established in the state. And that was done as a result of a group of folks who came to city council who had experienced discrimination, and they were asking for help, and the council responded. And so the Human Rights Commission is still active today. So that's just a few things I'll point out. But in general, I'm gonna just go really quickly through this history. As I mentioned before, in the early 20th century, there were a lot of federal actions that were occurring across the country that happened here as well. Some of you already know, if you're familiar with the history, Oregon's constitution has some not so great language. We're a pretty exclusionary state, especially for Blacks, Chinese, and Japanese. And the one thing, okay, this is a terribleness that I learned that I did not know before going through this project was that, this is a current issue with ODOT and their transportation bill not passing. And so it used to be in the 1800s and honestly through the early 20th century that local communities were responsible for paying for improvements for their own roads. It wasn't paid for by the state. And so what some local communities did, and this was authorized by state law, was that they could charge an annual road tax. And they made a point of, and at the time it was $5, which was a lot of money. And so for the underrepresented folks, the Blacks, Chinese in particular, if they couldn't pay that tax, the locals would arrest them. And the way that they could get out of prison is if they worked on the roads. I know. So that's how a lot of the roads, especially in the rural areas, were built. That was not a great thing to find out. And then World War II in the 1950s, we had a housing shortage as across the state and many of the across the country. So that was similar to what was going on. We were not, the Salem was not one of the communities that was redlined officially by the federal government. However, Portland was, and a lot of the real estate agents followed the same sort of policies, which I don't know if you're familiar already with what redlining was, but it was done by the underwriters essentially, and they would identify what they considered to be risks. So people were applying for loans and they identified areas where they thought lower income or immigrant folks were not good risks to give money to. And in certain cases, and we did find specific examples in Salem, when they recorded plats, they would actually put language in there that only white people could buy houses. So we found that here. And then we did a lot of research regarding the development of interstates, again, similar to what was happening across the country. It was interesting because the folks who were developing the interstates actually used a lot of the data that was collected by the federal government through this redlining program. And they saw those as attractive neighborhoods that they could just tear down. And they were like, well, this is when the word blight came into play. And they thought they were doing a good thing for urban development. This was the beginning of urban renewal, that sort of thing, where they're like, let's just tear these down. We'll put great interstates in. They did not have public engagement. And so a lot of these marginalized folks were displaced. Now in Salem, what we found with I-5, as you know, it's not down through the center of our city, but some roads were. So the bridges, for example, there were some communities that were displaced by the bridges, and then the Salem Parkway, as well as Mission Street. that displaced some folks. So we did have some examples of that here. But I-5, interestingly enough, they made an effort to ensure that the highway did not plow through Chamawa. So they did make an effort.
Where are those restrictive covenants?
Where?
Yeah.
Like what locations?
Yeah.
South Salem.
South Salem.
Yeah, as you can imagine, we tend to, looking at the development of Salem, and you can kind of see it today. North Salem was really the area where the lower income folks it was acceptable for them to settle workforce housing. You can kind of see in the Fairmount neighborhood, right? So if you drive around or you're familiar with Fairmount, that's your neighborhood, right? So the top of the hill, that was for the fancy, I'm being terrible, the fancy people, but then the workforce housing, it was okay once you got down to the lower elevations or closer to the roads. Yeah, but it was interesting. So our neighborhood associations actually started relatively early here in Salem. And South Salem was one of the first ones that organized. And that's another interesting thing that we saw was that the wealthier neighborhoods organized more effectively and were able to petition city council for more road improvements. So again, in that era where local jurisdictions were responsible for improving their roads, there were better roads in South Salem earlier because of that. So in the 70s, that's when, again, reflecting the national trend, we had the beginning of urban renewal plans. And that was where federal money was used again to ensure the redevelopment of these areas that were identified as blighted. And again, that resulted in the early ones, the loss and the displacement of marginalized communities. So, we went and if you really want to get into it, you can read the report. I'm not going to do that today. It would take too much time, but we pulled out a few of these urban renewal plans to kind of get a sense of what communities were impacted, and what was done. And they used the definitions, again, provided to them by the federal government. So we had a local agency here, which we still have urban development, right? As time went on, again, the more organized and vocal neighborhood associations were able to communicate their unhappiness. And so as time went on, there was more community participation here in Salem, and then it was also required at a federal level as time went on as well. So things got better, but I feel like urban renewal is still a word, and it's still happening. So we also looked at, you can't see the top of it, but this table shows, we looked at different transportation plans, again, trying to get a really good understanding of how Salem's policies were impacted by what was happening regionally. And so you can see we took a look at a lot of the Mid-Willamette Valley. The Council of Governments did some transportation planning, and this was all connected. So the interstates were being developed, then local and state roads were being developed. And we were trying to get an understanding of whether these plans really, whether they had a component for public engagement, whether they cared about the communities they were impacting. And initially they really didn't. It was really the engineers, like, how do we get from A to B really fast? Or what's the cool way we can, there were neat innovations in street development at the time. So again, the early, like in the 60s, 70s, they really just focused on construction, and they didn't really do any kind of public engagement at all. But later plans, so similar, like it really reflected a lot of what was happening with urban renewal and long range planning. Again, in Salem, we really saw more vocal, I won't say opposition, but a demand for community participation through our neighborhood associations. And so what they started hearing as we moved into the 2000s was a need for multimodal transportation, because of course the lower income folks didn't have access to cars, and they needed transportation that would get them from A to B. And interestingly enough, so if you're familiar with, Salem, we initially had honestly better, more accessible transportation with the streetcars. And then those went away and were replaced by cars, then it became harder for lower income. So anyway, I don't know that probably won't ever go back to streetcars, but wouldn't that be cool if we could? Yeah, so we focused on 5 different populations, and Salem's unique because we're the state capital. And so in addition to the Indigenous, the Black, the Chinese, and the Hispanic populations, we really wanted to also take a look at the institutionalized people who don't have a voice, because there's quite a lot of those that are housed or were housed in Salem that's been decentralized now. But we really wanted to get a better understanding of whether their voices were included as well. And they had, all 5 groups had a lot of these things I've listed here in common. So at some period in time, each group experienced displacement or discrimination due to racist policies. I keep going back to the institutionalized. One of the things that I think I knew about it, but the more I read about it, I got all upset, is how if you're a woman and your husband was mad at you, he could just drop you off at the state mental institution and not really have a reason and commit you. So that's like, I was just like, what? So women didn't have a voice for a long time. So that was disconcerting. And then each of these groups was highly underrepresented within our city council, our power structure. Decision makers were white men until relatively recently. And then most of these folks also tended to fall within lower income bracket, and also tended to have lower home and automobile ownership. And that's again because of the racist policies and like the restrictive covenants and that sort of thing. So again, reflecting what was happening at a national level, and limited access to housing and transportation. I do want to also circle back and just mention again that the Human Rights Commission did exist. And it's starting in the 60s, and we do have a handful of really wonderful examples. The picture there in the Black community. So there was a Black couple who successfully, with the support of the Human Rights Commission here in Salem, they tested Oregon's first civil rights law, and they won. They were discriminated. They tried to rent an apartment in West Salem, and they were turned down, and they brought it to Oregon Supreme Court, and they won. So there are some lights in the darkness, I'll just say, here in Salem. So we then really looked at specifically Salem's plans and policies. And again, a lot of I touched on the Human Rights Commission. At the federal level, things started to turn around in the 60s. I really became quite impressed with President Johnson, which I hadn't really known much about him before. I mean, I kind of knew, but he sort of picked up the baton from Kennedy. And so a lot of our NEPA, our EIS, our National Historic Preservation Act was done under his leadership. So a lot of the things that, knock on wood, we're still enjoying today are because of the work that he did. And of course, Congress happened to be aligned with his way of thinking at the time. At the Salem's level, so the city council actually adopted starting in the 70s. So the Human Rights Commission was really the first thing. And then council adopted some code beginning in the 70s prohibiting discrimination. And then of course in the 70s, at the state level, the statewide planning goals, which that was really, I think, the key trigger, especially goal 1, which is related to community participation and engagement. And that's around when neighborhood-based planning really started, and the neighborhood associations were empowered to really have an effect on Salem's policies. And then fast forwarding, see, I'm jumping all the way to 2022. So we're really focusing, like this work that we're doing now is an outreach of the update to the long range plan, Our Salem, which was adopted in 2022. And our historic preservation plan is a component of that comprehensive plan, and the climate action plan. So there's some specific goals in there relating to having a better understanding of how underrepresented communities are impacted by these policies as in particular, you know, you're seeing at the state level, the governor's priorities related to housing, and accessibility to transportation. And so the Equity Roundtable was established as an outgrowth of the needs identified in that, comp plan update for the city. And so this is the group we've been working with on this project. So you have the final report here. I talked a bit about the Equity Roundtable. So the other thing that's happening is the transportation plan update. So that's Julie Hanson, Eunice Kim, those two folks are working on that. And just in particular, how this document hopefully will be used is to inform some of these future decisions, especially related to transportation and housing, and making sure that the decisions that are made with a clear understanding of not repeating the harm that was caused in the past. And so a lot of that, and I'm going to show you this fun flow chart, is really, you can kind of see this spectrum. It's all about how the process and how you engage the community regarding these policies. And so my experience in looking just through the history is that, you know, 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, it was really more at the other end of the spectrum with ignore, or we're going to make decisions for you and just maybe tell you and, you know, pat you on the head and be like, yeah, it's fine. But we're now trying to make sure that these folks have a voice, and that we're collaborating with these folks to make sure that we can address the needs. And we maybe can't answer all of the needs that are identified, but that's the goal. So that's all I have. I know that both Eunice and Julie are available. They weren't able to come tonight, but if you did want more information, maybe in 6 months, they're going to have more information. They're continuing to work on this. And if you want to have a better understanding of how maybe we can assist, again, moving forward, one of the things that we were asked by the Equity Roundtable is whether we could do more research on some of these other underrepresented communities, which we didn't have the capacity to look into. So if that's of interest to you, please let me know, because we said, sure, as we have time, we can do some more research, because it's really interesting. And the more I learn, I really am sort of a glass half full person. So for me, I'm like always on the lookout for those success stories, for examples of folks who banded together and were able to get their voice heard. So that's what I'm always on the lookout for. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions before I sign out?
This could be a one, maybe the Park Service underrepresented community grant might fund.
There's a grant?
What?
What?
I mean, I think you have a good case here. You have a study saying, hey, how it ties in, and then you could use the money to hire somebody.
I did not know there was a grant. I will follow up with you. Beautiful. Love that.
It's not much.
Write that down.
There's funding. But
Oh, yeah, I know. Glass half full. Okay, can I let you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Did I ask you?
All right, next up on the agenda is work plan assignments. Does anybody have any updates on projects they've been working on? Yeah, go ahead.
So, Julie Whalen is of Willamette Window Restoration. The window restoration, I think that's her company. Anyway, she is an expert on all things windows. She actually worked with the Park Service for many years, and yeah. So she is willing to do a workshop, and she's done workshops before. She has all the setup and materials. She just doesn't want to do it during the summer because she and her shop are. That's fantastic. So yes, we finally have somebody who says yes, they'll be good.
Great, that's exciting.
Yeah, so we just need to figure out the time that works. So, cool. Yeah, sure. From home, stuff.
What kind of support do you think you'll need to get the word out or?
I don't know, I think basically we just need to figure out. Figure out a good time. And then maybe, I don't know where we want to do it, but I know my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I have plenty of windows.
Yeah, I know, I've got some.
Everybody's got something, I mean,
At your house.
everyone
Yeah,
like
please come
has
to my
theirs.
house, come to my house.
Love it.
Have them.
And it's so expensive,
Yeah.
so anything that you can do yourself.
Yeah.
is like a huge.
I feel like it'd be nice if we could coordinate it to put the notice in the newsletter that we mail out to all the owners.
Or if we could send, like, you've got an email list of everybody who's got a historic property or who's historic district. All those people have windows. If you provide refreshments, people will probably come.
Yeah.
I'll do cookies. That would be so.
Witness.
Oh, I like that.
I love.
When do we mail that out?
Either December or January.
Right.
Make sure you don't use a Mac though.
What?
Because it composes this on Windows operating.
You're so punny. All right, you are driving me nuts.
Okay, well, we'll follow up, maybe we could get like a general month or something like that, and try to coordinate on.
Yeah, something that's not summer, so,
Yeah.
yeah. But then you get in the fall and then everybody's busy, so
Should we shoot for-
January always looks like a great time to do stuff because it seems like that's happening.
Do you think you'd get the newsletter out? It just.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah, just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd say do it
Do we
after the
have your
holidays.
Christmas tree up? January seems nice, I feel like that's at least enough time to give us lots of planning time, so.
I mean, and I
But
could
if
have
we're
to,
all happy,
okay,
there's a window out.
Cool.
And they're gonna be here, so watch.
Beautiful.
Those are sick.
oh, stop it.
I'm gonna cancel.
that.
They keep coming.
Gotta go.
All right, who's next?
Sounds like it's
Beautiful,
your
thanks.
plan.
Okay, we have window jokes. I love the window phosphor.
We'll have an opener for the comedian.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
then
There you go.
Send it to them.
Looking at.
Yeah.
we've been working on the Englewood Forest or Park, the Englewood Park, local resource foundation. So we've got some good research, done with the local folks. I'm gonna start working on the actual write-up here in the next couple of months. I know they've got their eye on a March 2026 100-year anniversary party, and they'd like to have it done by then. So when do you think we need to have that submitted by or make that date?
I think we figured out that we need to introduce it, we need to adopt a resolution by November at the latest.
Okay, okay. Okay, great. I think then maybe I'll try to get that write-up done by the end of September. We'll have October to, maybe a couple weeks October review. And then on to HLC. Okay, cool, great, that gives me a timeline. Any other updates?
Jake. Schedule with or sign.
Yeah, you guys should talk about what you're doing.
Let's see, we got. I was contacted by the owner of the Jerry Frank House, so they are again looking at doing their landmark nomination. We've got a site visit. I don't know if you'll be able to make that or not, but
I gotta talk about it. Maybe.
we're coordinating to at least get that ball rolling again.
Appropriate, I would love to see it.
Yeah, what I will do, let me see, I've got a first visit set up because I want to make it feel real to the applicants, and there's a few times where.
I'm pressured, but I would be curious, so.
But what I'll do is because I don't want to cancel the first meeting because I want
Yeah.
to kind of get the relationship back moving because for a while they were not around. But yeah, I'll do that. I'll get in touch with y'all. I think at one point, Robert and Chris Morris were wanting to work on that one. You know, Chris is no longer here, so. It'd be good to anybody that wants to.
Well, I guess I might have more dates and time on my plate if we wrap up the Englewood nominations, so we can just check in. I feel like that would probably be holding it on the national register.
We'll see.
Also, the scan survey continues. We had another public survey day last Saturday. Fortunately, but also unfortunately, Jake and I were the only attendees, so we walked around and photographed and entered many buildings. We went to Howard Court, which I was fascinated by. So that project is ostensibly nearing some kind of conclusion or multiple conclusions. Right now, we're hoping maybe we can actually meet with the neighborhood association next month and just talk to them about the work and perhaps consult them about possible outcomes, because we've got a few possible outcomes. And I wish I'd actually talked with them before this point, just in terms of engaging more with the actual neighborhood association. So, but some of the outcomes are perhaps sort of like a public publication, like what the Grant neighborhood did. Public history sort of displays, in addition to the more sort of nuts and bolts compliance reports that we'd work with SHPO about. So those are the outcomes we envision, and yeah, we'll see where we are a month from now in terms of how we approach that and consult with the community at the same time.
Sounds good. You're doing good work. I also want to, I put you on the spot now, right? Whenever it makes sense for you to do a presentation for Landmarks about your
Sure.
findings. So if that's after the neighborhood or before, whatever you think.
Yeah.
What was one thing we found? We found in an area that a lot of the house just east of the school.
Yeah.
Campus, there was a lot of mid-century housing. There was one, what was it, 1880s?
Yeah.
An I-house type.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of additions on it, but the main house was an I-house.
Yeah.
It was a lot older than most of the other houses
Is
there.
it not listed?
I think it's listed. I think I was just looking at it today. Yeah.
So explain what an I-house is.
So,
Good.
yeah,
Jake had to explain it to me, actually.
cultural geographers, got into architecture at one point, and there was a guy like Alan Noble, and before that, a guy named Fred Niffen, and one of the things that came out of that, it wasn't a thing that the designers did, but they started to look at where these different houses are, based on their shapes and their design. And one of those typologies was called an I-house. And so it's one room deep, and it's got a staircase in the middle, and then it's 2 stories. And so it's got one room, and then you go upstairs in another room and another room. And you see them all through the Mid-South and Midwest, and they track things like settlement patterns real well. And they track, distribution of cultural things. And so it's neat, they use that architecture as a way to verify how the built environment changed based on the cultural groups as they moved west in things. And some of them, because they're kind of compact, some of those tend to follow railroad lines, so you'll see a railroad town, they'll have I-house a lot of times. So it was a neat thing to see with all these like mid-century houses.
This one had an addition on the back too, right? It had thrown something up.
It had a lot going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of a seed in cultural weathering all the way around it over the years. Yeah. So that was kind of fun.
So they're called iHouse because the style was commonly built in rural farm areas of Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa, all states beginning with the letter I.
Yeah, that's why it's like.
Okay, not to be confused with the iHouse of universities, which is the international house.
Well, the J house looks like a nine. You know, with the.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, they came from.
Yeah, it's kind of neat, the different variations, like where it was cold. It will affect where the chimneys are. Some have chimneys on both ends, some have one in the middle, that kind of thing. So it's kind of neat.
That's the. So maybe you guys, yeah, talk amongst yourselves and decide if you wanna come in September or
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
Before, after. I mean, it's
We'll see. So
what
the,
happens.
the scan
Or
will
November.
be on the 10th. So I think we're gonna go to the neighborhood meeting first and then we'll just.
I'd definitely be curious to see if there's any other weird stuff that you could,
There's lots of.
or
weird
maybe
stuff.
not weird, unique, cool, interesting.
Lots of cool stuff. There really is. I mean, it's a big neighborhood. There's a lot of different building periods, you know, so. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff.
Always photo contest. That was a red salmon and since house. Dropped off the prize. And, like,
Single
showed
prize,
up,
wonderful, good
so
job, good job, good
Followed through.
job, well done. So Jessica's
Ready
not,
to move on to something more exciting for next
what
week.
could we assign? Christmas party, you could be here at the Christmas party, we gotta start thinking about that now, like I'm not even kidding. We like having it in, if you wanna go to Deepwood, but we could also have it at Lord and Scriber. I saw Yvonne yesterday, she welcomed us to have whatever we want there. That's where we had that outdoor, she wouldn't make us sit outside in winter.
It was nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, great. Well, that's some progress on our work plan assignments. I guess we do have archaeology one.
Which that's what we,
That's good. I would be like, so we now have to do something
Okay,
in October. Alright, we're doing, it always happens like that.
okay, cool. Well then, is there anything on the newsletter?
Last meeting, we decided that we were gonna do an archaeology themed newsletter. I was gonna adapt some stuff that we already had written, but I don't remember what. I will figure it out.
Okay, so nothing needed from us.
I don't think.
Okay, great.
Let me know if you.
Well, then that's everything on the agenda. If there's nobody else here to give public comment, we do have the Historic Preservation Officer report on the agenda.
Well, I just got back from Mexico City. For those of you that got here early, I shared a little presentation about my trip.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was gonna bring candy, but I forgot it at home, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I brought strawberries and cookies. Yeah, I had a great time. If you haven't done it yet. I think the only thing to share is that if you don't know, Chris Morris resigned from the commission. And we have heard, help me if I get the dates wrong, next week, the mayor is supposed to be meeting with the appointments committee. We have 3 applicants for 2 positions. I did see the mayor yesterday and she's a little bit more close to the vest in terms of. She doesn't want to know what we think. I mean, in terms of recommendations, previous mayors have asked. So she just basically said, we'll see and we'll let you know who gets appointed. So the applicants, one of them was Brian McKinley, who's here today. He's been on the commission before. Christine Shute, who's with SCAN, who's been working a lot with you guys. Well, she didn't show up at the last. She's been volunteering for survey. And then Matthew Miller, he's a contractor, who does a lot of work in in your neighborhood, Connie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh, he's a good guy.
I know. So fingers crossed by next meeting in September, we'll have a full commission.
Exciting.
So
Theoretically, they'll get formally appointed on the September 8th.
council meeting,
At council, or September, yes.
they'll maybe tell us.
And then swear them in.
Okay. Okay. And do
Theoretically.
you know yet, Jake, if you have any hearings for September?
I don't know, but there are some things that may shake out in your hearing, but I don't have any say.
We put some things on the September agenda in January, so.
Okay.
When we were doing planning for the year, we decided it was too late to plan for Historic Preservation Month, and I was told by our chair to put it on the September agenda.
We're gonna think about it and also
Well,
talk about
that's the
the
only thing
Christmas
on the
party
agenda, we can maybe do it next.
and also Christmas party.
General fall planning would be good.
That's fine. That's good. You don't wanna forget about it. Always comes up too fast.
Have to do it way in advance.
We gotta start doing that.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Is there anything that anybody would like to say to go the order? Okay, amazing. Well, then I will call this meeting to a close.
I do.